I found the kind of fuck up that really kind of screws things up. The EU, for some reason or another, was sending a whole shipment of shit out to Jupiter. If it was the right stuff and not on a fatigued ship, it would have been fine, but it was out here. What I'm doing is I'm just saying, hey, he made it in here, whatever, and maybe this is where he came from. And I'm going to figure out from there with all the shit what goes where and what we start to do, because I was just sending the wrong material to build a base. It was as if I'm trying to build something else, and I don't know if I was hoping to increase this and sent it from back here, or if it was something else. I just don't fucking know, but it probably came from here, if I recall correctly, going to here. And yeah. So I'm just trying to remediate the situation without doing, without giving them any kind of advantage. But I also don't think that they should have to fly here and then head home with, hey, why'd we go to Jupiter again? The scope of what I'm doing has gotten complex again to the level that it's like, yeah, I feel as lost as I did when I came back after a couple of days. And again, that was the beginning of a new, set of parameters, essentially. I think I was at the beginning of the decade. And these beginning of the decades are hard because it's where you start figuring out what the hell is everything doing. And that you figure out, wow, I really screwed some things up before. But in this case, like the EU and Japan are trying to get to Jupiter, build their base. Other things are largely going home, whatever home may be, to try to recuperate their ships and move materials back. In one case, the Russians had something, they had built a supply station big enough to handle their ship. So they were sending something out to Saturn to do work. Now, eventually we're going to see the U.S. fling something out there, something big to actually build a base, I think. Although, this is not bad. I'm trying to see if there's anything that's really attractive. What's good about this is that big research. So this may be a research base, a big bio research, because bio is what, it's not like I'm lagging in bio or anything, but it's what it feels like I need the most of right now. It may be false, however. The fact of the matter is the North Americans are the only people who can actually colonize Saturn. And other people have to make the bio breakthrough that maybe I don't need so much. But it's a deep breakthrough. It's all the way up here. So technically I've been cheating. I've been mining these because they have this bonus resource. You can't do that until they have a resource present. I already did my exploration there, so I'm just going to stop cheating, basically, although, like, this ship is hauling a resource back, and the Chinese have one on board. And so after finishing the first year of the 2090 decade, we got some people beginning to do settlements, not the Russians, but over in the Jupiter area. So for example here, why? Well, I can buy some fuel if I do that, get rid of the chip. It's not a bad thing. Just a matter if this guy's even interested in selling fuel, which, whatever. I've got more fuel than I need there, and a few $1 billion. We had some people sell off stuff from their main area where they had the option to do so, but not everywhere. And in general, the big buys are being held off because it's just not clear that I'm going to be able to deliver the resources quickly enough. Yeah, I could build a big freighter with the Russians especially, but I've got a lot of ships out there already. I've got one there, and another one there. That's 3. and I'm only allowed one extra, so I'm actually at my free cost. Now, yeah, maybe paying an extra 4 isn't that big a deal. But the bases and the CVs are counted together, I think. I'm not positive about that, but I seem to recall that being the case. For each CB, I'm not sure. It's not clear there. For each CB, you'll pay this. Or base in operation above your sport limit. Yeah, they may be counted separately. I seem to recall something in the example indicating they were together, and I really don't want to work on hunting things like that down. There was very little exploration. You know, we got the Russians looking here, the Chinese there, and that's really it. And this long-term probe that is worth some victory points, so that's kind of cool. But other than that, yeah, you know, people are mainly trying to get their bases to work. And I'm trying to get my damn head around everything that's changing and going on, which is a lot now. If I get too far in, I should probably tell you a little bit about what's going on. So I don't just jump over the turn entirely. What do we got? So I think most of the people are still shifting ships around and lifting stuff to their bases. There's one definite exception. The EU is launching a telescope. They have their advantage with the telescopes. It feels like a waste not to throw that up. I have a lot of cash and not a lot of buy mechanisms, so I may have to build myself a bigger launcher very shortly. But for now, that'll do because I haven't established my base yet. Let's see what else. The Japanese throwing a flyby out, way out somewhere. Again, kind of I don't really need the money. I don't need materials up here yet. I'm getting the base established. Let's get some exploration done off of what we can manage. Otherwise, you can see we're shifting. This is after movement's already started. We can see the base is shifting here, the exploration out here. Otherwise, we're just moving things around, you know. Not really working too hard to try to get those sales contracts or whatever fulfilled. And the purchase contracts, well, we'll take them when we can, but the sells are a lot harder. It seems much more important to be building up the bases, because if I can't sell stuff and get the cash from it at reasonable levels, well, one, I can maybe sell some stuff and throw the chit back in for next time, and another is I can always produce different material at those bases instead of whatever they're best at. I can produce the material that they need for the sales chit if I don't manage to get something there in time. What I'm worried about is that with some of the nations, I'm underutilizing them. So I start looking around as I start moving things, and part of the problem is that I take a break between turns and I'm focusing on all the different players. It's not clear to me where my stuff all is because the map gets crowded and it's very full and it's spread out in weird sort of ways. It's not like, in Europa Universalis, which has sort of a similar kind of thing. Usually somebody's focusing in one little area or something. Here, it's spread throughout. And so, I look at Asia and they have one CV that I can see. Same thing with South America. Why do I have so few? I certainly have capability to have more than that. And I have the resources to have more than that. So I probably should be doing more. On the other hand, maybe I can't reach everywhere with them. So this could actually be making some exploration out on Saturn. And I think they could as well. No, they don't have a spaceport yet. A very long-lasting and largely ineffectual orbiter here went down. What else? The Chinese went and took that asteroid, got themselves another victory point. And again, I don't allow them to explore if they're on the asteroid, but now they're essentially on the planet. But they're fatigued, so they're going to have to go back to their base. I did set up a settlement on that base. I can buy some more iron next turn. I got a lot of transfer of and people trying to play around with their trade chits, you know, just to get some extra materials up there cheaper without having to boost them. And that's it. Start to play something, you start to get more and more of a feel of what you need to do to remember what the hell is going on. And in this case, I'm starting to position my launches in such a way that they tell me where it's going, especially when I'm launching shit up. That's pretty easy. But I might also start using little markers of some sort or another, just to say, you know, this ship's going here, so that when I do my pre-planning, I don't waste all that effort, or more likely, end up sending it to the wrong place during the movement phase when, you know, I'm trying to remember what the hell I was doing. I do things kind of like that. So I'm thinking with EU, this game's much more pulsed in the sense that everybody does this step, everybody does that step. In EU, you do a lot of bookkeeping type stuff, and then you send your fleets out, and I can kind of position those fleets in such a way that I know where they're going to head, you know, in order to do the exploration that they're going to do. I remember having kind of problems, though, with Conquistador, where it was a little harder to annotate what something was going to be up to. All right. But there are similarities, obviously, to that kind of game where, yeah, where was I going again? Why did I need to bring these materials there? All that kind of question. Help if I told you some of what I actually did, not just what I'm, you know, how I'm annotating things. Yeah, lifting a bunch of shit up, but I'm also building, with a lot of the nations, these heavy carriers, again, to haul materials out as far as Jupiter. Now, the U.S. doesn't have to do that. And in fact, they're in kind of an, well, no, they have another heavy hauler there. But they're in kind of the interesting position of not having a whole lot of resources the way some of these others do, where they can just fling together a ship that, you know, makes sense to get moving. To a bit of a computational problem here, which is the U.S. doesn't have the supply station that it needs for this ship, not by a long shot, over at Freedom, which is this base. And, oops. That means I can't go flying out into Saturn. I don't have the kind of range to get there. So I think I'm going to have to make a short jump up to Jupiter. I may actually drop my materials off there that I'm planning on building a Saturn base with. And then maybe do a little exploration around Jupiter as well. I'm not sure. Terrifying myself when I roll for movement and get a 0-1 and I'm like, oh, I'm fucked. You're not. If you have a CV that's big enough, remember it's one level off per level of CV, and my malfunction rate is, I'm sorry, my engine malfunction is 3%. And I subtract 4 from that, so there's no chance of a failure with a crewed vehicle that's big enough. But it does kind of terrify me, and it also kind of, hey, why, anything could crash, yeah, but 1% may be way too much, you know. It would be kind of along the lines of if you were playing, I don't know, a World War II game, and every now and then a battleship just sinks. It could happen. It could certainly happen. A big storm could come up and could destroy a powerful ship. But it's just not accounted for because it didn't happen, you know? So I feel like there was something I wanted to say that I haven't said so far, but I don't know what it is. Of course, I turn off the camera and I know right away. Yeah, so the US moved to here. It's the best location to go to. And this is one of the problems, is this clustering, you know? So for example, what may happen is that 2 of the 3 players go there. and one says, screw it, I'm going to go here, which is not pretty. Now, in some cases, you might be saying, well, I want physics more than engineering, and it's worth it, or there might be some other modifier in play. But in this particular case, although this one's a 4 as well as this one, so, you know, I mean, what? Right? And this one's a bio, which might be more interesting. But anyway, if everybody, and this is often the case, looks at a location and says, this is the place I want to be, like we do with the bases in each case, like we did with a number of other things, well, then you get this clustering where everybody goes to one thing, and it feels a little weird, especially given that it's not particularly difficult. So if you think, again, in the conquistador light, it's kind of advantageous to go build your colony away from anyone else. All things considered equal, go somewhere where other people aren't. Maybe a little bit to the same extent in Europa Universalis as well. But here, it's essentially the same. Wherever your base is, it's going to take a roll to move anywhere in the system. It's not more difficult. It doesn't use more fuel. It doesn't do anything. It makes you just as easy to attack anywhere that you are, even if you're right next to each other. There's no sort of co-location, no ability to just like create armies and march them around on the planetoid, and therefore, yeah, I'm not sure I want to be sharing the same planet as someone else or whatever. There's nothing along those lines, and what that means is it just comes down to which one has the biggest economic advantage. There's also not a decrease in economic advantage by overpopulating. The fact that everybody's here, that doesn't impact anything. And I'm not sure that it should, you know. I mean, these are planets with 6, 7 small bases on them. What the hell? That's not going to eat things up. But it does create this kind of clustering of impacts. Now, in this case, well, if 2 people go here, the one person who goes here or whatever may actually gain a benefit because these guys may stick around longer just to avoid a move roll. Of course, if it's not a CV2, if it's a CV3 or bigger that's present, there is no move roll. But I won't be able to think that cleverly. Mixing up the two of the 3 not real flags. I don't see the Canadian part of the American flag there. It's divided the other way. But it's not because of that. It's got to do with the coloring, whatever. I just glance and I get the wrong one in mind. But what ended up happening, Asia is doing something Asia should have been done here. I did them over here. But Asia should have been, is doing something a little different from what most of the other players are doing. It's actually moving resources to bases that don't produce much of them or haven't produced much of them, getting an equality of resources throughout his bases. Is this a big deal? It's not really a strategic thing. It's actually more to do with just making sure that I can refuel here. Because I have a large, and also, well, I failed. Was I supposed to build the large refinery there? No. Yeah, and it may actually be towards getting a bigger spaceport there, but I'm not sure. We start exploration. Japan's kind of a dick. They landed over here, but they did a flyby on this, depleted it, getting their bonus there. No life, but you know. And actually, there was kind of a cool counter card that they could have played, but they chose not to. So that's kind of neat. Exploration's been kind of exciting so far. Not just the Japanese thing, but the EU got another depletion here. They did not get one here, but they did some mining. The Russians got a depletion and signs of life and all the goodies, victory point, biology markers, all that going there, which is cool. And they're on a place where there might be life, so that gives them the chance of boosting this and getting all the goodies for that as well. I think that's it for the Russians. End of 92, EU still has an empty base, which is a little weird. I'm sending materials to it, but I don't know if I was supposed to blast something to it and it got to the wrong place, like here. It kind of looks like that, but I don't know. Whoops. I have money. I can haul stuff. I really don't know. I had it positioned so that it looked like it was going there. Nah, whatever. Maybe it went early enough in the thing that I hadn't started doing that. Some people are building up settlements. Some people doing some transitions in terms of selling chits. The U.S. working on getting their supply station. It's still not big enough. That's a huge ship, isn't it? That's a CV4. That's as big as anybody is flying right now. I hope I'm legal on that. Yeah, I'm allowed up to CV5s. How about that? Okay. Just was making sure. The differences in the shipping is kind of interesting. So, I mean, you look at somebody like this, the CV3 is kind of interesting. The Russians tend to have some extra carrying capacity, but it's just like, it's not a singular thing. So like South America has these two semi-freighters, but they can build bases. You know, I mean, that's where there's kind of this differentiation between the powers, not just in terms of, hey, I have this special ability, but also what they can actually build. And that's kind of interesting. I don't know how much I'm going to play tonight. I've been gaming, been doing too much of it. Yeah, I know it may not seem that to you, but I'm not used to focusing so much. I kind of want to play a computer game. I kind of want to do some yard work and shit like that. I kind of lied about, I am coming back and doing another turn. But as I look at the US, and I don't remember what happened, so I'm just leaving it as it is, I have enough resources up here to build this supply station up. It may have been a turn thing rather than a resource thing, though, so I'm leaving that alone. But what it means is I don't have to boost resources. I can throw a flyby out. And what's kind of cool, I guess once I get here, I can just, you know, do the jump over to there, and that'll just be an extra turn, which is probably about right anyway. It does require another maneuver roll, but it's a CV4. It's not going to break down. Notice that I forgot to move that little fucker along. I'm pretty sure he did his exploration, so all I'm doing is making his roll for movement. And that's 2-point difference between Jupiter and Saturn. Fast enough that drops it in half. I just noticed another little error. I was looking over the tech chart and the Russians cheated here. I can't actually fix this, but I can drop them back and I can give them some additional engineering points to make up for that. So they would have lost up to 7 points, or they would have lost 7 points, I think. So let's give them those points. It's not exactly fair. The reason is they may have used this to get themselves some kind of benefit, where they were able to hold off buying something that would have allowed all kind of other people's stuff. They threw away a bunch of points though, so it should be fair. I'm having some trouble looking at Asia and figuring out what the hell to do with them. Right now they're running, it's kind of hard to see, but they've got a couple of different ships hauling materials. Do I want to, and we're going to do some exploration and maybe some production. I think I want to shoot something out. One of the questions is the flybys, they're not the best thing. So, you know, I could go out here and get more attempts maybe against something that's a little bit more usable. And that's why I was studying this, to see, could I get forward in the engineering in a way I want to? Because what I'd like to get to, this looks really sweet here, but that's way out there. On the other hand, I can't go up here, but we got trade routes here that can increase the amount of resources that I can shift right at the beginning of the turn. So that's a fair amount of shifting. The severe atmosphere can get me towards that hard crew exploration. I don't know how valuable that is. The physics tech is definitely valuable. So I think, and somebody's already bought it, I think I'll probably aim for one of the physics planets. Choice, of course, influenced the groupthink everywhere else, and almost everybody's sending something up. The Russians are just sending material up, but the U.S. made the first choice to throw a flyby. But a lot of the people have decided, it makes sense to get a rover out there and get better experience. It doesn't, flyby is kind of, they get a couple of passes at each planet, and that's kind of neat, but why not just stand on one planet and search the hell out of it, especially if it's what you want? One thing I've been forgetting about is this deep space astronomy, which is actually slightly better than the planets the telescopes have been aiming at. It just gets kind of melded in, and I didn't realize how big it had remained. Whole bunches of research going on. Japanese focusing on the deep space stuff, really. But they actually have a CV out here that I forgot about and had to redo. That got the only depletion, I think, for the turn. And I forgot to check for life, actually. Not very likely. Doesn't happen. A couple of 100s. Generally don't mean shit. All right, let's fill out the bases. And it's just building shit up. And we finish up the last turn. Or this turn. The builds, some people actually built settlements. That hasn't been happening for a while. Good. The supply stations is the main thing. Try to set myself up for Saturn, but also you want your mining and everything. EU is, and Japan are behind the times. Remember, they took a while to get settled in the Jupiter bases. And we're already 5 years in, or 4 years in. Leads me to something I've been thinking of. So, I cannot see turns taking less than about 10 minutes each. With a full boat of people, it's probably more than 20, more like 20 or a half hour or whatever. But let's say you got super fast, super dedicated people. 10 minutes each per turn, which means 100 minutes, say 20 minutes for the economic phase. Again, ridiculous. That's 2 hours per each of these. And we've got 11, 12, 13, 14 of them. That's 28 hours. They're talking about, like, I don't remember what they said, but I got the feeling that one long day, you're not going to be able to do this in a long day. It may be possible if you're playing a solo game of it that you can get through it in a long day or in a weekend or whatever. But this is not a small game to play the campaign. My initial thoughts, yeah, it's kind of funny. My whole thoughts about this game were not what I thought about it is not what I got by any means. Like, and I'm pleasantly surprised. It's not a Euro at all. It's a pretty detailed exploration of space. It focuses more on the bigger picture in a way that High Frontier does not, but gives me enough detail to be meaty in a way that Space Core does not. Like, Space Core feels like it drags at the end, but that's because it's a Euro. When a Euro starts bloating, that's horrible. When something like this starts getting more complex and more intense, it's like EU or like Conquistador. It's like, yeah, that's fine. I'm looking at something that's going to take me many hours to play. At my pace, I'm probably lucky if I get a turn done in an hour at this point with playing all 7 players. Call it 40 minutes at best, but which means that whole calculation, for 10 minutes, well, now I'm 6 times that. So I'm looking at like 120 hours. I don't think it's going to take that long. But again, I've been playing kind of hard for me. And I'm maybe halfway through, and So there's a fair amount of meat to this game. There's no question of that. The other thing I wasn't expecting was how goddamn big it was going to be, you know. And again, that's positive for me. But I don't tend to visualize things when I read box descriptions or whatever, and I'm kind of like, I'm really worried this is going to just be kind of like somewhere in between High Frontier and Space Corps. And I kind of presented it that way so far. But honestly, it's something different. It's much bigger than High Frontier is. You know? Maybe because there's 7 players. But honestly, in High Frontier, at least the times I've played it, you have a couple of little bases and missions going on at once. Here, I'm running, you know, what feels like an EU-style expansion into the solar system in a lot of ways, especially with the threat of military coming into play. I'm terrified of it. We'll see how it works. After being fatigued by yard work yesterday and today, I had to do a smaller shopping trip along with a nice long walk that taxed me a little bit, but yeah, I think I might be getting healthier. Gonna try to squeeze in a little bit here. A lot of materials being lifted, and also, shit, I did not pay attention to what he's up to. What am I hauling from here? I don't know yet. But a lot of the nations are sending forward their colonization ships, as it were, with freight to get to the exterior outpost, build that up so that they can continue on next turn, whatever. We're going to have to get the base building cheaper, which may not happen easily because that's 2 spaces out. Maybe a long time before the U.S. isn't the only person expanding outward. But the nice thing about unflipping these instead of just using them as transports is I've got like 2 per nation. So one of them reached, brought its materials, and now it can go out either to Jupiter or Saturn, do some exploration, do some mining because it has mining capacity, haul that stuff back somewhere, depending on how much stuff it has, and recuperate it. But, you know, by having 2 of them, one of them's en route carrying materials while the other one is out exploring, and by the time this one arrives, this one might be out of, you know, it might have, because it's also doing mining, it might have fatigued out. And that's kind of the thinking with a lot of the countries. US is actually sending up to Mars. I'm not sure why. I got something I want to build there, I guess. Doesn't look right. I'm sending iron to Mars. Why? Because I have a sales chit in Mars that I want to clear out, get myself more cash to move forward. I don't know if anybody else is doing that. Other people are interested in it. These guys have some buy chips, not a lot of them, not a whole lot of money yet, but I probably want to buy this up and start getting that mining station built up using that capacity. But for the most part, we are building up the outermost supply base, because that's a place where there's exploration nearby, so I can refuel there if I need to. And some of the nations actually have ships that aren't able to carry materials. What else? South America and Africa are sending a rover up, get some additional exploration, probably heading it out to either Saturn or Uranus. Saturn's looking a little crowded, and the numbers aren't so good, so we may send it out further the way the Japanese have. And I don't think anybody else is lifting anything other than materials. Money's running a little low for some people. So for example, Japan, they're running low on cash. And they have a buy chit, no sell chit. That's kind of disturbing. I may not be able to exchange this, or I may just do one purchase to get that chit out of there before the end of the decade. Just lost a whole booster full of stuff. A 4 booster with materials on it, that's a big hit. Yeah, I get an engineering check. It was a good one, but it's kind of painful. Painful coordination where we have all kinds of ships coming in that one box, people coming off of the asteroid belt who, or Saturn for that matter, both converging there, along with people who are, long term coming out from Mars or even Earth to push to Jupiter. So just lots and lots of ships hitting there at once. Exploration, I think the only real excitement was a couple of depletions against this thing with so many people operating there with crewed vehicles. Yeah, that's going to go down. Nothing interesting showed up though onto the base. Builds are kind of interesting. We got the spaceport up there, so with the U.S. ship coming in, it'll just be leaving next turn. In fact, it could actually just leave this turn. Did I lose a turn off of all of this? I don't know. I think I had to lose that turn no matter what because I wasn't prepared to launch to Saturn until now, basically. Other people, saw somebody build up one of their settlements. I don't remember who. Hit the 19. Here we go. These guys. They got a lot of materials back there on Mars, and it's pretty hard to move them. They only, I think, have one. No, they got two ships moving now, but they only had one earlier, I think. So, they weren't moving their materials as quickly as they could be. Largely attempts to build up and get that Jupiter in better shape, although we do have people playing around with some of the other bases. Places, look here, I still got a large mining station there. I got to get the materials there. What happened? I don't know. I think I may have upgraded to the large, or may just not have noticed. Where is that? Vostok is actually in the asteroid field. Yeah. I don't know. I did something there. That's one of the problems is I start losing track of everything because I'm taking it a bite. The bites are getting too big. Each player turn is getting too large. So I may be looking at too much granularity to really be able to express things. I may have to step back to the point of, oh look, now the U.S. has an operating base on Saturn. It's kind of the discussion for the decade, I don't know. Okay, it's just getting tough. Still doing yard work and fatiguing the hell out of me. And tomorrow's dancing, Sunday's shopping, Saturday I may be recuperating. Really worried about how the pace is going, but I'm trying to push myself to get one turn in a day at least. That's what I have to do when I'm playing the bigger games. Like if I'm doing something like EUA, I have to push a turn through, or else I just lose all touch. My brain's slow enough that I can't remember that I was supposed to say something about the game and not just about life. Everybody just lifting crap up, and people who don't have a lifter available are kind of like, I don't know if I want to spend for one. There's a lot of ships moving around right now. Let's just see where things fall down. There's a fair amount of cash on a couple of people like Russia and EU where they could launch something. But I want to make sure that I've got my bases set up for the next decade. And without playing as much, it's a little harder to keep the focus. I had a big booster going out Jupiter way that failed completely. Blew up on the pad. That's, $8 worth of stuff or whatever for me. It was a 3-point booster with 4 materials on it. Generation, a couple of equipment fails. US lost their flybot out here. EU lost their telescope. We had some fatiguings too. But the only real success story was the Asians managed to get a depletion on whatever this is, Callisto, and the Russians also on Callisto got both a success and a draw, but also a not a depletion though, but also a good mining roll where they got a bunch of fuel. Not a lot of exploration going on, but and in some cases, like here, the EU didn't want to leave here because there's still a 1% chance that their engines could just break down. Why take that risk? Yeah, I don't know, because this is a better place, but yeah, whatever. So now on to bases. I'm noticing as I build up the bases is I'm running low on spaceports. I've got like, oh, that's a research station too. I've got, looks like just 2 spaceports left. I don't know, I don't think that there's an actual limitation on these. There might be a countermix limitation. But what it means is, if you build up too much of your spaceport capability up here, you won't be able to get your big ships out where you need them. Unless there's no actual limitation. And one of the things is, yeah, I've got some big spaceports where I don't need that many. I've got overlapping coverage and everything. But the problem is, you know, I'm just like, oh yeah, I can build that up, I can build that up. I might want to build ships there, especially when I had tons and tons of resources available, which spiked things there. So I'm going to have to look and see about that countermix limit, whether that's in play. I don't know why I should do this on video. Anything here that talks about there not being a limitation? And who knows? Generally games like this don't have a limitation on that, but because it's a shared pool and everything. But even if they don't, it would be painful to produce them all. So what we may have to do is have people who want to build them have to sacrifice and reduce some of their bases down so that they can get better bases out somewhere else. In a sense, those bigger bases don't mean a damn thing. They're just basically extra hits, although I could build and repair ships that are bigger than what I could normally build or repair in that particular base or service. And that's kind of where it gets weird, is like, it is advantageous to have it, so I don't want to get rid of them if they're not there. But, I mean, normally games tell you, okay, cash, resources, facilities are not considered counter-limited. And most other things. Ships, bases, tech markers, trade markers, pirates, asteroids, and missions are limited. And most of them have a reason. Yeah, so we might have to start creating some fake bases. And the only real big deal about that is they probably couldn't have gotten built to the level that they were without the increased production. I got like, well, this is just a supply station there, so that's not that big a deal. Yeah, I don't know. We'll see. And this is all I can do tonight. I thought I could push through maybe another turn or something, but I just don't have the oomph in me. Back after really a long weekend without playing, Friday through Sunday. Friday I went dancing, which ends up being a mistake because I couldn't go shopping. I was too sick Saturday and Sunday. You know, not just the fatigue from the dancing, but the other shit that's going on. I seem to have, you know, I threw myself into this 2 weeks ago when I went shopping, hauling my cart, and then I went dancing the next week. And yeah, I felt pretty good beforehand. This time I was kind of like, I'm not sure. I'm pretty damn sure I'm not contagious. Just because no one has, I couldn't get tested. Like a couple of weeks ago before I went dancing the first time, I tried to figure out how to get tested. Basically couldn't, you know. I would have to go to a doctor and pay money. I tried doing it through this WebMD thing, and no, they couldn't help me. So I'm like, well, look, just not doing this, you know. There was testing that's supposedly by appointment, and I tried twice to get through to them. Couldn't get anything. By the time, I had done that a couple of times, I'm like, well, I'm not going to know in time now. Test takes a while to get results back, so screw it. I feel fine. And there have been no reported cases where somebody has been reinfected or has had it for as long as I have. But there are reported cases of people with the symptoms continuing for months and months, like I'm seeing, who, didn't necessarily have it terribly bad, but it just is progressively getting worse. And I'm like, okay, I guess I'm in that fun boat and probably have this shit for life. But anyway, coming back after several days, this is a hard game to cope with. I'm mentally pretty aware right now, but the fog of not remembering where all the little moving parts are running, it's like coming back to a Euro in that sense. It's not like an EU type thing. It's hard to say because, I'm so fucking used to EU that, and I hit it harder for more days back when I was younger, but I still feel like there's more little pieces going on with all the materials kicking around in specific locations. In EU, I get to sit back and plot my turn and then conduct it. I buy all my stuff and then I conduct my turn. And maybe I send shit to the wrong place, but it's not like this big juggling act. And here, I've got basically 7 different powers all juggling everything. Ships flying around here, there, and everywhere, some of them with materials on board, lifting crap up, some of it with, and just trying to keep track of where everything is. For the most part, most of the people are just lifting crap. Some of them aren't, or not lifting much. So for example, China is like, well, I got a couple of buy orders on bases. This one I definitely want to spend, and I think I have a fair idea of how much I want to spend there. This one, maybe I just want to buy one to get rid of the chip, because hauling materials from back at Mars is hard. Russia's, yeah, they're sending stuff up. The North Americans are not, and they actually have a fair amount of money and a buy chit over there, but that fair amount of money goes very quickly once you pay for oh no, I've got a booster. Okay, never mind. Yeah, my attempts to try to indicate where things are going make me just lose the things entirely because they're over on the side of the chart where they blend in. All right, so we got a lot of shit moving. Can't tell you too much about it. Just wasting air on mostly my situation, I guess. All right, let's juggle. I've usually been going in this much detail anymore, but South America lost a booster. EU, I forgot to tell you, they launched something. They were the only ones who launched anything. A telescope up there. I kind of misplaced, I think, one of my units and was trying to send something where I didn't really want it. No big deal, I could send it somewhere else. It's not like the decision was fixed in stone or anything. We got a little bit of complexity going on with like the Chinese grabbing the search over here ahead of time. They decided to go over here where they can mine a little faster because this is becoming a mess, and the competition for Saturn's planetoids is looking like, well, this might be as good as I get, which is why Japan and Russia are still over here too. Russia might actually be depleting something important, this one, which is kind of an interesting planet because it's the Victory Point planet coming up, and that'll just disappear if they deplete that ahead of time. But one of the things that was really striking me that I really felt like I wanted to talk about, that has little to do with the game, but I've been playing something somewhat similar in terms of a computer game while I don't have a lot of, mental acuity or whatever, and physical energy and breath, which is Politico. Tropico. Sorry. Politico is a board game, if I recall correctly. Tropico 4, which is like this SimCity type thing, but you're playing a dictator of an island, whatever. You know, building shit up. There's fighting in it, though, and disasters and stuff. But otherwise, other than the fighting, it's pretty close to a SimCity type thing. And I'm into that kind of game. But man, you know, so much easier when the computer's taking care of all the little bookkeeping and stuff. And, you know, you send things off to go do something, and then you can just ignore them. And that's kind of the same as the EU computer game, except there, I actually find it harder to keep track of what the fuck's going on. Because you end up with units stranded in various places, as opposed to in the board game where you're like, you look at the board and you say, huh, okay. You know, you don't position your troops in Tropico, which is the main difference. Anyway, most of the stuff made it up, and searchy time. Trying to figure out, you know, for exploration time, I did one, the Chinese first, and they got chits from both their locations, no depletions, whatever. Nothing exciting. But the interesting thing on the search is, hey, I'm in the 3 flyby box with a 3-point flyby. With a 9 exploration, maybe it's worth going for. As far as I can tell, because here's the thing, I'm going to be able to search it 1, 2, 3, 4 times max at this point. Now, I might have wanted to start earlier, but this is where I chose to go for, to start thinking about it. There's no special rules that I saw, and I'm not the best person at finding shit in these rules. There's no question about that. However, in the campaign victory point chart, it does talk about this, and maybe in the errata or something it goes into more detail. What I've got here is exploration of Alpha Centauri. You get 15 for a CV, 5 for an RE, can earn 20 for both. No depletion or tech markers necessary. I think just making the roll gets me the success there. How do I mark that? Yeah, I don't know. I don't see anything that's to mark Alpha Centauri. I can put a little flag there, but that doesn't tell me if it's a CV. 2 little flags becomes a CV. I mean, there's no way that you're not going to throw a robotic out there eventually, right, to get the 5 extra victory points. 5 victory points is a lot of victory points. So I think I'm getting that automatically. So then it's just a question of, well, what am I doing? And I'm rolling against a 9. I want as many chances as I can get because, I don't know, why not? My failure rate is not bad, so I'm going to get a success. And now here's the interesting thing. I don't know which chit I get. So I roll. Now there's no depletions whatsoever off this. I will be getting an engineering chit off of this. And there's no, oh no, there's a life chance. So if I get a depletion, I would get a life check, but no cards would be drawn. I do not, and that's that. And anything else? I need to mark that. So I'll put a little Japanese flag there to remind me that Japan has gotten their 5 points for it. And I'll put it here because I'll put it out on the planet once they actually get a crewed vehicle out there, if they ever do. That's an expensive cost, and that's worth 15 victory points. But just flinging this thing, that was cheap. Search event was out here, I think. This guy did some mining. Where the Russians got a depletion. There's already signs of life. They could have gotten the jump up to life, and they had a pretty good chance because they actually found this same chip, this subterranean water chit, which is an awesome one. That's why the North Americans are over here, is because of that chit. They're probably not going to move away. This is actually a better resource planet, less search capability, but it has the same signs of life and everything. Slightly much higher chance of finding life. They did not do an exploration though because they don't want to risk not being able to build their base this turn. Once they have their base, they can start launching crap to it and pretty quickly start, setting up a refueling system. If they can't get it right away, the ship can go back to Jupiter fast enough, but that's a little bit of a delay. And I guess that's about it, except for bases. And as we move to 97, got to do it that way, otherwise my brain will not be able to handle it right now. Yeah, the only really interesting thing was the building of the base there. And it succeeded without a depletion, or without a retiring. Not to get the terms confused. Other than that, not a lot of base building, actually. Some of the things I was kind of screwed up on, like here, hey, I don't have any settlement there, so I can't buy this. I was like, wow, I really want to move some materials. Yeah, I got to get a settlement built there. I got plenty of time, so it's not that big a deal. It's not like China has hordes and hordes of money that they're wasting. Everybody who has a lot of money has been boosting stuff. In fact, South America kind of got screwed by their booster dying because they had it kind of calculated so that they would get most of their materials. They would get all their materials up by the end of the decade. And they're going to be able to do that, but now they have to buy another level 1 booster and fire that up. And less materials get up there. Okay. Back later. You know, it is so exciting to come back and be able to play a board game, though. Especially something like this that I'm really kind of enjoying a lot. Most of the players just boosting crap up to their bases. Asia sending it to the asteroid belt instead of Jupiter. But the others, I think, largely going to Jupiter. Japan's out of gas. I could build a ship and try to haul some of this stuff again. Too expensive to do right now. Actually, I couldn't, because I don't have any iron there. And China doing one different thing. They're boosting themselves a flyby to send out Uranus way. This guy, he can't be there. I think I forgot to roll a search for him. So why don't I do it right now? He's got a spectrometer. Does that matter anywhere? Not really. This is the best place because of the search for life. But I'll just go here at the physics, so I've got a 9. And we survive and draw not much of interest. Well, points. And now we see where it goes. Now this is going 3 out. Japan has a speed of, I think this impacts this, of 0.7, which means it's only going to go to the 2 box, and it does. This is just catching up for last turn. That should have been there. All right. Now I do the movement and all the launches that I'm doing and everything. We got some ships coming due, the big lists coming in everywhere. Not a lot moving. Yeah, just the exhausted ship, I guess. Unless somebody's in a stupid location. Oh, the U.S. Colonizer has to figure out where to go. They're probably going to head right here. They have to still roll. But the reason is they want to get rid of the rest of the depletions on this because I built my base there. I want to keep that there. Everyone else might want to, or a lot of other people might want to degrade that and, you know, maybe focus on getting a base here. On the other hand, I don't know. You know? But the thing is, we know the U.S. base is there. And while we don't particularly want to target the U.S., as long as that stays open, it's a potential threat to them. A couple booster failures, and in addition to that, I did things a little differently than I first described. Moved a few more of those CVs around, largely because I'm not sure I want this here. He can't mine. I got to think about him moving. But largely because, hey, if I'm going here, I don't want something that mines there. And for the US, for example, they chose to send their heavy one here. They had to roll for the Orion anyway, getting in, which Might as well send that here to do the exploring here and send this thing where it can do mining. It can't do mining where the base is. So a little bit of jiggling around with that. I'll let the Russians sit there. They might as well search again. They have a full cargo hold. That's the only issue for them, and a low chance of retiring. But I've got another ship coming in. Who knows what's going to happen? I want the U.S. to mine. I didn't consider that. Let me just roll them there. What do they want to pull into their location? Blue or red, probably. We'll go for blue with a 6. So we fatigued and got just the 1. And I screwed up because I forgot to give Asia a 1. They rolled. I don't know the Japanese did. I think they pussied out. But yeah, even on a failure, you get something. However, we had a fatigue roll that I did not take into account. We had 1 depletion. I think the Russians got it against that. Ooh. Too bad that didn't count for anything. And I think, I seem to think the U.S. got a depletion somewhere. But the only place they could have gotten it was where they just went, which would be an engineering one. Yeah, I forgot to drop this. This should be 2. Okay, that's why. Yeah, I drew the card for it. It's hard to remember all the technical pieces. But that's okay because those numbers probably shouldn't go down as much as they are anyway, because there's an option for this many players to not do that. But anyway, there's no particular reason I want to get rid of this card, and I was probably going to leave it in place no matter what because of the high chance for actually finding life there and get me boosted up with where Asia is. Overall, I don't see anything too exciting there. It's just a matter of, people are gathering up resources out here. They're going to haul them back when they're tired. That's kind of the problem with this guy is he doesn't have to take any delay. So, but it still is a turn without searching, which is kind of like, yeah, I'd like to get that. Bio chips, as many of them as I can possibly get. Russia's collecting them up. We had the engineering chips run out and have to be repopulated. And you can see everybody's got some points there, bases. And as 97 comes to a close, nothing too exciting. I guess the only really started building a research station. Great, we knew about that. But the interesting thing is, it doesn't make sense for me to build a space station there yet, because the ship that I need to recover, I can't recover there until I get up to, the supply station doesn't work. I think until I get up to a small spaceport. I think the small supply station does not work. I'm not sure if I have one kicking around. I built all these. There's the small spaceport, but we knew about that. Yeah, I think I ate up all my supply stations, so let me take a look. The small supply station, which I can build right now, definitely doesn't work. The large is still not big enough because that's a CV4. So I have to go up to a spaceport, which means it would take me 3 turns to build that thing. By the time I do that, I can just haul my ship back. Did I really need to mine? Yeah, see, this is the problem. I was thinking I could haul a lot of stuff back here and get goodies. But I think for the one supply resource, it's not worth it. All right. We're running a little slow on this video, but that's okay. I'm taking things easy today comparatively, which means I didn't go out and do lots of yard work, and I'm not cooking as fancy a meal. I made eggs Benedict. I'm making some leftover fish tonight, but yeah, yesterday I only got 1 turn in. I'm hoping to get 2 in today because I also don't want to push it too much with this, but I mean, 2 in today means I'm set up for the economic, and maybe I'll do that as well, although that's kind of the hardest of all possible things, but I kind of flow towards that, which means the video might go up tonight. What I did find was people are pretty much just launching what's left. We're towards the end of the decade. There's not a whole lot of money left. And where there is, I'm like, I don't want to buy another booster. I don't know what I need, you know. But where there is enough money, I'm boosting things, and that's most of the countries. Japan, of course, has a booster with no money, and South America has some money, no booster, but not a lot of money, not enough to afford. But anyway, the main reason I'm back is I found, hey, I forgot to send this flyby out last turn. No big deal, I can do it now. I don't know what would happen if, you know, playing opposed. I imagine that kind of thing would be rarer, but would still happen. I'm inclined to the, oh gee, you found this, yeah, go ahead. It doesn't really impact anything. It's just going to be out there anyway. Certainly the decision-making level that I play when I'm soloing, it is not impacting anyone. It might impact in an opposed game. I don't know how much. I want to note, maybe this is just a personal peeve or whatever. The board gets very cluttered, no question. Europa Universalis' board gets very cluttered too. I deal with it, right? In certain areas. Here it's more, I don't know, it's more like it's either cluttered or empty. You know, it's not like people are mainly progressing in their own little spheres with a couple of hot spots. Nah, it's like people are mainly not anywhere, or they're all there, just because of the nature of the game. Whatever. But that clutter means that mentally I take some shortcuts in terms of determining, hey, who's where, what needs to be done. And again, I don't think this is solo only. I think I would do the same because it's the clutter that's the issue. So I'm looking, say, for the EU, and I scan through all the things trying to look for EU color, and you know, yeah, the US looks kind of like EU, it looks kind of like Russia. There's a difficulty when you have 7 different powers and a limited color mix, although nowadays color mixes aren't that limited, but in presenting things, and the fact that the bases are inverted. One of the shortcuts that I take is I look for inverted pieces, and those are the things that, like, I might have to do something about, which is why this Russian unit got skipped last time, but this time I deliberately did so I don't really object with that. But yeah, I mean, I see this and that draws my attention, and now I have to pay attention to that in a way that I didn't. I'm not sure I see much point between the two different types of basis imagery. I'm also still very disturbed by the reserved markers, which do not show a national flag, because national flag is one of the other shortcuts towards identifying things. I've pointed that out before. And I mean, you know, if I was really an industrious person, I would make little stickers and put them on the backside of all the ships or something. But it's just I could see something like this coming out in playtesting, and I'm a little surprised. But, you know, it got through, that it didn't irk someone else. What happened in the search, in the exploration phase, I flubbed a lot of stuff. And I think that's kind of becoming pretty common. It was common before, but I think it's still pretty common. I don't feel particularly fuzzy-brained, a little bit, but it's just hard to capture everything that's going on, to remember who I'm playing or who I've already played. So like in one case, I passed over and thought I had already done the Asians and hadn't, and then went and said, oh, well, I must have done the exploration, but I didn't do the mining, and then I did the mining, and it ended up out of order, and one of the units ended up flipping over from mining instead of exploration. I'm just saying, screw it. That's, you know, it's like in battle games where, like, shit gets screwed up, so what? You know, it fits into the narrative. It's not unbelievable, whatever. You know, sometimes the order doesn't work exactly as expected. And I think that's fine when you're playing something of this size, to have a certain amount of chaos introduced just by, you know, failures. We had a couple of depletions actually fairly early on. Kind of hard to remember where they are. Like this happened, and I think that one, there may have been more. And now it's the bases, and really this is just boosting bases up. In particular, one thing that I'm interested in, I know this one's not going up, but the Chinese were interested in getting this one built up so that they can get rid of that purchased shit. It's not a bad purchased shit to have kicking around there, but I'd rather get another chit, you know. I don't know, we'll see. But my consideration had been, I boosted stuff so that I could build some colony there and begin cycling chits through. It may not be that big a deal. I might have been better off building up the mining station, whatever. I sure do miss being able to produce every type of resource stuff. It made things a lot faster and easier, although it's probably part of why things are this hairy at this stage in the game. Up in 99, we jumped all the way through to the exploration phase. Nothing too exciting happened, to tell you the truth, but we've got, you know, depletions beginning to wear the planets out. And that's, you know, again, those would be a couple bigger, you know. The progress would also not be pushed as hard either, so in terms of expanding out into the solar system. So, you know, you get a different game depending on the number of players you play. And while you could say, well, what if I was playing with the optional role where those numbers, and this is what I was trying to allude to, sometimes my speaking goes way ahead of, or my brain and my mouth motor on way ahead of what they should and jump things. So these numbers, if I was playing with that option, would be higher, as with these back here, so the need to push forward would be less if I was playing with that expansion. On the other hand, not playing with the expansion, we're seeing that greater push forward in order to try to get enough technology. I have some worries that I might not be able to get the technology chart up, but you know, now that I've discovered that there are ways to convert income into technology, that kind of changes things, right? Because then that expansion might mean more bases or deeper bases. Because you have a limited number of bases, you want to create more of them. More chance to put research bases for one thing, but also the production, the trade, etc., to boost your values so that you can fill out the tech chart a little better. I had worries; those are beginning to fade. That the lack of exploration is kind of going to cause issues. And I guess that's really about it. I mean, we have a fair amount of fatiguing, a fair amount of mining, etc. going on. We've got places where, for example, the Chinese slipping into here, I think they got the depletion and deprived other people of the ability to, because they move last in reverse initiative order, and then they search first for exploration. So they were able to deprive everybody of the one here. So these guys were only able to mine instead of search or whatever. I'm not absolutely certain that that's what happened, but someone got deprived at the very least. That would be the South Americans. No, maybe certainly the Russians. The Russians got deprived completely. They couldn't do shit. And I'm pretty sure the South Americans only could mine. So yeah, the Chinese must have depleted it. Onto the base side, I don't expect a hell of a lot to be happening there. Yes, I boosted some stuff, but, you know, one of the things is I've got places where, yeah, I'm going to build a settlement and could have, if I had done it a turn earlier or whatever, I could have converted and gotten rid of one of my chits. But, hey, that's life. And also, of course, the normal, hey, I forgot some things, so like the EU forgot to boost stuff here, and I just cleaned that up as at the beginning of the turn instead. The places I probably should have been building settlements up earlier. I hit somewhere where I got like to 19, I think. I don't remember where it was. someone got to the 19 level, and that's, maybe it was over here, yeah. And, well, it turns out I didn't have enough materials to get up to 20 anyway, but if that's indeed the place. But the point is that, yeah, I'm just shy of getting to an area where I'd get additional resource or tech, in this case resources. How big a deal is that? Well, this is pretty far back. You know, it becomes a pain in the butt to haul stuff. What I'm finding is those Martian colonies are having a hard time getting out to where I want to build stuff. You know, they're largely built up, and that's why maybe colonizing the shit out of them makes sense. We're moving into the economic phase. One thing I noticed, the Callisto marker. Callisto's gone. It's depleted fully. However, it's possible that a random event could save it and make that exploration shit show up at the end. Oh, the designer had suggested shuffling the counters in a bag. The hard part about that is it takes a pretty big bag to deal with these. They're fairly large. I do have such a bag, I'm just not sure quite where it is. But I found that shuffling them in the box top worked pretty damn well, actually. You know, the main problem is the game takes up so much table space that finding the table space to shuffle the counters was hard. But there's a nice big box. Throw them all in there and face down and shuffle them and then stack them. A lot easier than what I was doing, which was this weird sort of trying to shuffle them as if they were cards. Okay, I'll come back for the economic, but not tonight, man. Everybody collected their 2 political markers. That one's just too valuable in terms of boosting tech. We might discard it at some point in order to boost to something more interesting. For example, the stronger military policy, if war breaks out, that's one of the most appealing. Other ones are, well, growth of settlements is kind of neat too. Increasing crew vehicle or base support. Here's the base support. That's crew vehicle. Base support's over here. Yeah, that gives you the settlement growth one too. The additional bases is the big deal though to me. That immigration. But anyway, after that we got the random event, which ended up being immigration. And I looked through everybody. China had the least at 14. So now they're going to get 2 to any base they control. And that sounds like to 1 base. That's pretty cool, but I think, ignore if they don't have a base, yeah, so I would be able to increase this to a 2-point settlement, or maybe more appealing, increase this from a 1 to a 3. The reason this is neat at 2 is it'll allow me to play with this shit right away, but you know, that won't be until the beginning of the decade, so I'm kind of tempted to boost up. Let's see, from 2 to 3 means that I'd be getting, or from 1 to 2 to up to 3, or from 1 to 3, it gives me an extra resource, whereas getting this does not get me anything. So I think I'm gonna boost that one. The initiative, and nobody decided to spend political markers. The reason being, it just is such a random function anyway, that, you know, unless you're just willing to slap down a high percentage, it kind of feels like, you know what, I might get lucky like Russia did. They have no bonus. So far they're in the lead. I haven't done this, but then I realized something interesting. I may be doing this wrong. This is stated in a ambiguous fashion. And I'm suspecting I'm making it too complicated. All players roll percentile dice for initiative at the same time. Players can expend political markers to increase their initial roll by 10% per marker spent. Well, if they said 10 points, I would know what they meant. They mean increase, you know, add 10 to your initiative roll. But calling it 10% throws it into doubt. Now, because one way of saying it is clear, the other way is not necessarily. 10% could mean one of 2 things. It could mean that plus 10, and if that's the case, I wish they had stated it that way. But by stating it as 10%, what I've been doing is taking the initiative roll and multiplying it by the percentage. So for example, where it says plus 40% to initiative roll, I'm saying 40% of the roll that I made. This might be clarified in the errata. I'm going to keep doing it the way I'm doing it, even though it's a little more complicated. But, you know, again, there's one very clear way it could have been stated if it was meant to be the other way than from what I'm doing. Therefore, I'm assuming that this is what was meant. But I've often been wrong with things like that because we're talking about percentile dice. So calling it add 10% may not mean 10% of the die roll. To continue, we're going to see China keeps their lead. They got that big 40% bonus, but the other side, South America, didn't get much at all. What it actually means is you wouldn't see numbers like this. So South America has a plus 40%. That's highly variable. You know, the bigger your percentage is, the more variable the results are. They got a shitty roll. 11. 40% of 11 is 4.4, add 5, 16. If it was plus 40 points on the percentile dice, we'd be talking about a 51, which would put them in second to last instead of last. But anyway, so not that big an impact. But the fact of the way I'm doing the calculations increases the randomness value and decreases the value of that straight addition, because the case, you know, that 40-point case instead of 40% means that I'm taking 40% of 100 die roll instead of 40% of whatever the die roll actually is. But anyway, like I said, I'll keep doing it the way I do it because it's written in an ambiguous fashion, and I believe the way it's written actually supports the way I'm applying it more likely, even though I can say there's a fairly good chance that that's not what the designer means, because there's just this tendency of saying plus 10%. Yeah, well, it's not 10% of anything, it's plus 10 points. The strictures of some kind of clear benefit. I'm going to compare this again to EU, where you have goals that are based on the political situation, on certain areas that you want to control, etc. Without anything like that at risk, the idea of going to war is highly suspect in this game. It just doesn't look like it's economically or however you want to call it. It doesn't look like it's going to improve your victory points to go to war, even with one or two people, against an enemy. And so the only way it makes sense is if somebody appears to be running away with the game. Now, at one point that appeared to be perhaps Russia. They had an extra base. Well, now the US has an extra base. Do we want to pick on them? No, you know. Chances are it would end up being you would have to end up targeting both players, and then you need a big coalition to go against them. And here's the thing, I'm not allowing away from the table talk, which means since this is done in reverse initiative order, well, if China is willing to go to war, and China has some advantages in that degree, nobody's really better militarily by a significant amount than anyone else because of the way the tech chart is structured, where everybody gets a bonus from the tech chart. Like, it's easy to catch up and everything, so you don't see like one technology as you would in, you know, maybe a game where you don't have the interaction, etc., of you know, people on the same planets. It does make absolute sense that the technology would be easier to achieve if other people have already achieved it. But that smoothing means you're not going to see as easy a big jump. And the fact that, you know, spending little bits of your tech points on something to improve your technology, you know, to catch you up with everybody else, is generally a good delaying tactic before you purchase your big thing or whatever, it means that you have kind of everybody's up at one level, and then there's maybe a ragged bonus. And that bonus doesn't seem that big wherever it does exist, which is, I think, nowhere right now. I don't think anybody has fallen behind in a military race. Early on, it was more in that direction. The military stuff, there were a couple of players who were kind of edging along. That's all caught up because it's the cheapest path to take. So there's no real advantage there. The advantage on this, well, it's just the initiative roll. And then what it comes down to is, if you go to full all-out war, what can you actually gain? Maybe some resources or something. But it means you're going to probably be doing a lot less exploration while you fight that war. And anybody who can stay out of the war is going to gain an edge. So, again, I just can't see justifying going to war. I kind of want to test out the combat system, but not that much. Not enough, to violate this sort of, plus I'm a peacenik man, right? No, but yeah, without something to drive you towards war. And I don't know if any of these drive you towards war with other players. I just don't think they do. It might be possible that there's some resource that's so valuable that you're willing to fight over it, but then you kind of have to go to war with anybody who can get to it, or maybe work out some deals. But anyway, the fact of the matter is, the initiative thing works into this as well, because again, if China, and this is what I was trying to say, if China wants to go to war and they want a coalition, if you're allowed to secretly do table talk and whatever, yeah, maybe South America declares war on Russia, thinking, I've got a little bit of an edge. I've got the initiative bonus, although that doesn't apply because now I'm going last. So I kind of don't want to go to war if I'm last in initiative. It's not to my best advantage. So anyway, even if it were not negotiated, the fact that somebody has to signal beforehand, the fact that the lead player, or the one-time perceived lead player, Russia, is sitting up here, and the U.S., potentially a lead player, but they had such bad luck that I feel like I don't really need to trash them. They have that nice ship that allowed them to build this base early out here near Saturn. This might be the tipping point in most games because the U.S. starts out with the tech advantage. They have advantages towards keeping the tech advantage, which no one else does, but they fell behind in so many ways, had so much bad luck early on, that they're not in a dominating position at all. So that's the kind of thing that I think you have to see the military, is you have to see somebody rise above the rest by enough. Now, it's hard to tell without counting victory points, because you see Asia is sitting here with some decent population, but not great, some victory points, but they only have one mission. Then somebody like Japan has a whole pile of mission markers. Those are worth victory points. Other people have a pile of mission markers, except for the North American, US, whatever. So, it's like, how do you wrap your head around how well somebody's doing? There's no victory point track that's adding this all up. There's no way to know. And unless you're keeping track of which counters they're retiring in there and the value of them, which is kind of hidden trackable information, you just kind of got to go on feel. And my feeling right now is nobody's pulling away that hard. Anyway, enough chatter there, I guess. Complexities in the resource production are starting to come out now. So for example, the North Americans choose to produce what they produce the most of where they produces it. Even though that's creating imbalances, in part because of this chit here. I might have wanted to produce supplies there. The Russians chose differently, though. They chose to try to balance their production a little better. Now remember, we're going to have the capacity To shift, I think still just 5, right? Nobody got to the 10. I don't know where the 10 is. Here's the 5 resources. Here's the 10 resources down there. So yeah, everybody's still at the 5 resource transportation, which happens before the technology shows up. So there's not a huge capacity to shift things around to where you absolutely need them, but there's a fair amount, and freighters can move things. I could build a booster there and shoot stuff out. It's kind of a, you just got to balance it in your head and make your guesses. Factor with production, the bigger your settlement, the more you're starting to get from this, and to some extent, the less important the actual planet itself matters. It still matters, you know. I mean, the difference in some cases, so this has 6 iron base versus 3 of either fire or, I guess that's supposed to be water, but it's supplies, whatever. Which leads to the question of what is fuel. You know, in High Frontier, fuel is generally water, but this could be nuclear, it could be something else. It's abstracted, but there's not a differentiation of the different fuel types, etc., that you're using, whatever. That's fine. I just, there's things I miss, you know, things I miss about that detailed type of rocket, but I do feel overall this captures sort of this more political, economic game about a broader view of the expansion in a way that I really like, and I kind of wish High Frontier didn't include those parts, and I may, next time I play it, piss away some of the political chart and all that, because I feel like that gets in the way of what that game is really focusing on, which is the, let me get out to place X and do Y there, you know. Still working my way through, getting there. And for the most part, the production's done. We're up to the NPF bases. I did the transportation as well. For the most part, the transportation pushing out to the outer edge, which at this point is Jupiter for almost everyone. For the North Americans, the difference is it's Saturn, and that means Jupiter is kind of foundering in comparison to what other people are setting up there. But that's okay, because I want to be able to improve the situation by getting settlements there or whatever improved. So, you know, it's kind of a, yeah, I want to be able to increase my production out here, but that's mainly a fuel production, fire production, whatever, base. So I'm probably going to have to launch any further colonization all the way back out of, what is that? That's actually Mars all the way back there, where I have a lot of supplies available. And what's interesting is, because I've made the barrier, I can keep going, jumping to Uranus, Neptune, etc. 9 is as high as these things go, and I've got the capacity to build out to 9s. So North America doesn't have to get technologically superior to what they are. Of course, they only have 2 more bases, and currently my base range doesn't get me very far. But you know what? If I can get bases out to here, that's pretty good. The problem with that is, you really want a base here, because this jump's so huge that in order to do exploration that far out, well, you probably need the unlimited range. No, I don't think the range gets small enough. Trying to remember where the range is. Here's crew vehicle range, so it's going to be in engineering, but no, it actually bunks around here. So yeah, crew vehicle range doesn't go out more than 5, and then it goes to unlimited. So unless we get to the unlimited, you're not going to make it here. And if you have the unlimited, it doesn't matter where your bases are. So, you know, no real great reason not to just expand slowly and then work from there. So I've kind of screwed up here, and I'm not sure how this reads. Starting in the year 2100, and I remembered this in my brain. This is 2100. Roll an extra set of percentile dice for both pirates and asteroids. Also roll an additional set for both in 2080 if there are 4 more players on the game. Starting in 2120, new pirates use their stronger side. We haven't had a pirate yet. Okay, this is interesting. So I probably should be rolling 3 sets of dice at this point. Fine. I may have been rolling twice. I don't know. Anyway, I'll start rolling them and I'll come back and tell you what if anything happens. I don't know how far out we are. This is 2110, so we're not out as far as Saturn. The vagaries of fate ended up putting 2 asteroids here, no others, and we got a pirate. And that means I gotta look up me some rules, but those guys essentially blockade these bases. So people are gonna probably wanna wipe it out. It's a weak pirate, it should be easy. They also have $5. This isn't personal. It's like somewhere up here to keep track of it so that we know, hey, if you capture the pirates, you get some money, etc. They're probably a good deal. War doesn't sound like a good deal, but whacking those pirates, yeah, it sounds like a pretty good deal to me. I don't remember the entirety of the rules, so, you know, we'll see. We'll see if it ends up being so, but I think people are going to aim for them. The fact that it's impacting everyone equally is kind of problematic. You know, it's like nobody particularly wants to leave them there is one thing. So the question, but nobody's particularly hurt by them being there either. So the only real question is, what kind of benefit can you get out of it? I'm not going to look that up right now because it's time to do technology, and well, we'll get to test out the combat system at least. But yeah, the technology takes me hours and hours. I honestly, you know, I really don't think this is a big game. It is a much longer game than my initial thoughts. Probably more on the line with Whiff than on that. You can probably get this done, you know, 16 hours or something. No. There's a lot of jockeying for position in the tech chart, but because most of the people were up towards the front and everything, we have some breakthroughs right on the first round of it that I wanted to highlight. So North America, they actually spent extra to get this one. It's a crew exploration +3, which I did not mark down, but I could have gone, you know, for any of these, but I went for this one because I'm the person who doesn't actually need, the additional crew range, the additional base cost anywhere. And so that seemed kind of appropriate to push in this direction, see if other people go. And I get my -2, which is as good as being the second person, or almost as good as being the second person in something. Japan, we already had this, they just caught up. The other new breakthrough was over here, Russia, robotic exploration going up, and then the Chinese followed because the Chinese are at the top of the list everywhere except here. And this was the cheaper one that looked the more valuable in general towards them. Maybe not so much more valuable, but the other choices on the engineering path were less valuable. Over here, I'm just as interested, or at least as interested in the other choices. This is great, and maybe better than this is, but it may be more important for me to follow and use my bonus buying something that's cheaper and that maybe a couple more people have jumped into, or to go for this after a few people have jumped into it or whatever. Whereas here, I had the bucks. It was kind of the opportunism as well as everything else. Anyway, I just wanted to highlight that. I'll probably not come back during the tech, but show you the overall of it. Things that we're seeing, the different options. Hey, you know, could go to severe atmosphere. I think that only really applies to Venus. Anywhere else with severe atmosphere is not landable, so it kind of doesn't matter as far as I can tell. I'm not sure. You might not be able to build a base around Saturn. or Jupiter or Uranus. I have to look at that. My assumption had been you can because you're in orbit rather than in the atmosphere. But, you know, if you're able to produce the fuel, etc., well, maybe that should apply. Nobody's been exploring the moon or anything, so it's fine. But so that would be the possibility of the pressure shell. So far, Venus doesn't seem very appealing, and I mean, it's not like there are plenty of moons around these other things. So it's not like I can't build a base out there. And Venus is just not that appealing in terms of anything that I can gain from it. Yeah, it's got a nice card. It's got that 6 metal, brings it up to an 8. But it's way far away from where we're all trying to head, right? The other option on this trade routes is not bad. So if we're looking at that, that's fine. But actually, I'm looking at the engineering right now, which was the choice between cruisers. I was looking at, geez, I can go there cheap. Combat stuff, fuck that. Cruisers lets me go up to CV6s, more military vehicles. I mean, you know, it happens, but I'm just not that impressed with the war footing type situation. Which leaves one thing here, the space elevator. How valuable is that? Well, if you're talking about CV4s and less, which is what we have, it don't matter. So unless and until we get up to these cruisers, oh no, we got the CV5 destroyers. It's just nobody's using them because they're military. You know, what do I need that for? I'd rather have something that can build bases and mine than something that is not a bad explorer by any means. And then as you go to the heavier and heavier ships, you're getting to, you know, maybe a bigger exploration, but mainly you're going for better and better combat capabilities. So again, without the combat being a focus, it doesn't make much sense. And if we push towards combat, that just means we open it up and everybody else will creep in that because it'll end up cheaper than other choices, you know, unless there's a split. If there ends up being a split with a bunch of the players choosing non-combat and some of them choosing more combat capabilities, you might see enough of an edge that some of those big ships coming out could make a difference to the game. Beginning to wind down here now. Russia is kind of the exciting one. They've saved enough to get themselves up to space habitation, which would get them, I think, I hope I did this right. They have a big pile of political chips is the deal, which will get them the ability to then build bases outward as well, just because they'll be at that +3 or -3 to the base cost. But we're on Japan right now. And Japan has this. And a fair amount of physics. Now, it's not a whole lot. It's 8. They have no chits left. The cheapest thing they could buy is a 30. If they get rid of that 8 that they have, that drops them to 22. They could spend 22 billion bucks to gain something, either antimatter, energy focusing, which is just a combat chit, so not terribly useful. Improved trade routes, which is appealing. That lets you shift 10 instead of 5 resources, but still. And then again, ignoring the severe atmosphere, which I just don't see as that appealing right now. You know, if I got there cheap, whatever. But here's the problem. 22 bucks is the majority of my money. It would mean a whole bunch of stuff I can't do, like lifting materials and everything. So I'm going to pass with Japan and ended up not using this. I was hoping to use it, but yeah. And it also means I'm going to throw away 4 of my physics research. Screw it. Instead of being halved, I'll sell those and grab myself $7 for 7 of the 8. That lets me keep 1 unhalved, and that saves me some positioning. Everybody's gone. The Russians went too. Put them up there. They indeed got the space habitation. Otherwise, what's exciting? Well, we see militarism expanding over here. High follow-up on the robotic exploration bonus, and a fair follow-up here on this production thing. That's really only important. I mean, it's of some value, but that's really terribly important to people towards getting to the space habitation, which is why nobody followed the US into here. That's a good place, but this is so much more important to the mindset that I've got right now. All right, where does that put us? We just did this. It is time to grow settlements, and then, which is really just a mechanical aspect, and then figure out the policies, and I'll come back after that. One thing I forgot to do was look at the trade markers. That should have happened earlier. I haven't pulled them yet. I'll do that. How much does it affect my technology picks? Probably almost not at all, so that's fine. I always forget something, right? Now, for the choices, most of the players, one of the things looking at this made me realize was, oh wow, I forgot to, pay my maintenance costs. I looked over everything and tried to make a best guess, but it's hard to count all this shit that's out here. So like, what do I have? I have, does anybody have a low number of robotics? So Japan has a low robotic, but they have an extra one there. So they have like 2 on the board, I think. And that's within their limits. That I didn't actually count for anybody. So now I'm doing that in my head real fast. Because I was worried about the CVs and the bases, which are kind of more important at $4 each instead of $2 each. And a couple of people had either an extra base or an extra CV on the board. In the case of the bases, these are going to kind of be hard because your hard limit is 2 more than what you have. So like North America can only have 3 bases. So they're stuck paying 4 per turn, and then that starts increasing. I think it's 8 for the next one, etc. So if you have a low base number, you have a hard time filling out the galaxy, just as a heads up as to what's going on. Let me pull the trade markers for everything. And I don't think there's anything too exciting about that, so this is probably just going up. I mean, there may be opportunities that show up. In terms of population expansion, the big places, they grow automatically. So you have things like this that went from 20 to 22. But you've got others that are ones and stuff where it's really unlikely that they're going to grow. But if they do, they double, So